That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. And what's funny is we spent Bruins beat praising Jake DeBrusk, how important he was, how impactful he was, and he would be, and how it kind of saved them for the trade deadline. And then now, as people know, we record Bruins Beat Monday. It comes out Tuesday. This week it was, because the Winter Classic Tuesday came out Wednesday. Within 8 hours of that dropping, I think, it was first reported by Mark Allred, but confirmed by the team that Jake DeBrusk fractured his fibula. Correct? That's I have the right part of the leg, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. And I think also a hand injury, I believe, too. His lower body and hand injury. So yes. I know he got slashed in the very end of the first period and left a little bit early. So add that to the list as well.
Yes. So he left the Winter Classic with a laundry list of injuries, out for 4 weeks, the team projects. And on LTIR, the magic of LTIR, and suddenly things look a little bit different. I think first and foremost, this goes without saying, this is terrible for DeBrusk. Guy was fitting in perfectly, as we mentioned, to the top six, having a career year alongside Bergeron and Marchand. This is just a really brutal break for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's the best way to put it. Pun not intended in terms of
No, pun definitely not intended.
But yeah, you look at this team, and yes, they still have plenty of star talent. This is a team that's kind of been lifted all year by secondary scoring. So it's not like a thing that's going to hopefully not derail this team. But when you look at just how well DeBrusk has been playing, especially over the last 2 weeks, especially, I think you've really seen him hit another gear in terms of his ability to get into inside ice, develop scoring chances, make plays happen off the forecheck. It's just a huge setback for him, right? This is a guy that seemed to be playing at a level we haven't seen in quite some time. A guy that was on pace after that 2-goal game in the Winter Classic for 36 goals. And it just sinks you, he could also come back in a month and still be at a high level of play. But when it's, ends up being 59 games and you have 25 goals or something like that, that's very good. You'll take it, but still, you'd like to see him finally get rewarded with a full season, that 30-goal campaign that, I think the Bruins and Bruins fans have been waiting for him to hit that point, and he was well on his way. So it's just a huge step back for him, and a setback for the Bruins, especially in terms of just having that guy that honestly is probably the second best, maybe pure finisher on the team right now, right? He doesn't have the release of a David Pastrnak or what have you, but in terms of his ability to get into that grade A ice, clear up rebounds, tip pucks, all those things, he's a guy that is reliable and useful in terms of just getting those kind of greasy goals that are huge, especially when the team maybe is lagging a little bit in terms of offensive generation.
Yeah, you saw it on the Winter Classic. The ice was shitty, and you have a guy like him who, again, is not going to dangle through 3 defenders and go top shelf, but is just good at those greasy, dirty goals sometimes, and just slamming home rebounds. He's always, when he's on, he's so good at putting himself in positions to just pot home a rebound, or to get a quick shot off around the net. And you saw when he was really struggling that 2021 season, and then the 2020 season. No, I'm really mixing myself up here. The 2021 season, and the beginning of the 21-22 season. Time has blended together because of COVID. I think we have to understand, the time is non-existent anymore.
They're doing like a little Christopher Nolan movie there or something, yes. Trying to describe the plot of something.
Going completely interstellar here. But I do think when he was struggling for those times, as we mentioned, you could never notice him because he wasn't fighting to go to that grade A ice. He wasn't fighting to get inside the defense and things like that. Instead, he was, on the perimeter. He was not, and he wasn't producing because of it. And now, since his, revitalization, you're seeing that a bit more. And I think, again, it's good for the Bruins. But the real question is how this affects the Bruins. Obviously, it's bad for DeBrusk. We all agree. This does not help DeBrusk. This does not help his production. It certainly hurts the Bruins. But we'll get to the whole deadline thing in a second, but I will go back to this. The depth, Connor. The depth. They most likely will survive this. You'll move, I would imagine you would move Taylor Hall up. I mean, just judging off the line rushes from Thursday. You also have Pavel Zacha in there as well, but it still isn't a great thing for the Bruins.
Right, yeah. I think even it's not a short-term injury when he's on LTIR and you're looking at least a month where he's going to be on the shelf, but in terms of how they can kind of overcome this is, this is a team that all season long has been lifted by that depth. And I think even this is where you see a guy like Pavel Zacha being such a huge pickup for this team, whether it be earlier in the year when David Krejci was out, and he's been a guy that's been productive whenever he's kind of stepped into that 2C spot. And if he's on the wing now, if he's replacing, let's say Pastrnak, who I would say most likely is going to get slotted up to the top line. I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it in terms of Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak. So they should be covered there. The line will still be very, very good. It's about just the domino effect, I think, is the biggest issue. And so for right now, if Zacha is kind of the guy that's on that second line with Krejci and Hall, not too bad. Like it's not like you're bringing up a guy from Providence, or it's maybe a guy that has shown flashes like a Frederick or Foligno that could in a pinch work out on a top six role, but still having a guy like Zacha who I think has that high end skill can fit in pretty well in that second line for now. So, and you look at the rest of the domino effect, like if it's Foligno up on the third line, he's actually been really, really good in a pinch when he's been up with Coyle and Frederick. That's a line that has been noted of being a puck possession team, but having Foligno there keeps him, I think, even rolling out a simpler game in terms of just winning pucks down low, opening up space, and he's been effective in that role so far. So a little bit of lineup toggling for sure, but it's also not like a situation where the Bruins don't have the personnel in place to at least account for that. Like they have bodies, right? It's not going to be the same in terms of what DeBrusk brings them in terms of maybe tangible production, but it's not like they're reaching for, putting a guy that shouldn't be in a top six spot or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, again, you look at even just from Thursday's line rushes. Again, we're recording this before the game against the Kings on Thursday night. It's that time of the year. Again, we say this all the time where recording before game, maybe we'll make some predictions. Bruins win, Kings win. They just go on forever. The shootout never ends. Who knows? But I think the good thing is that Foligno has been playing well enough this year to make a real impact on that third line, as you mentioned, with Coyle and Frederick. So I think a lot of people are wondering, I think there's two lines of thinking here. A, the Bruins have to go out and make a big move at the deadline. And B, bring up Fabian Lysell and give him a look as, whether it be a top six right winger, putting him on that third line with Coyle and Frederick. And I think people should be cautious with both. If DeBrusk is out 4 weeks, that brings you to beginning of February from now. I don't know if that warrants going out and trading a first and other top prospects for Patrick Kane. If DeBrusk was out for the season, if DeBrusk tore his ACL and was done, then maybe you might have a point. Just, go all in for this year. I don't know how much I love the idea of, hey, the Bruins need to go all in, trade stuff they don't need to trade for a guy like a Patrick Kane. What do you think?
Yeah, I also just don't know how feasible, once again, it is. Again, I'm not a cap wizard. I don't.
We are no. Yeah. My name might be Evan, but my last name is certainly not Gold.
It is. Yeah, you are not Evan Gold. So I'm sure there's plenty of other cap loopholes and trickery that a lot more esteemed people probably are well aware of. But I think even when you look at the LTIR space the Bruins have, which again is going to dry up once DeBrusk inevitably comes back. This isn't a situation where he's going to be out and he could come back end of April where you could kind of bank that LTIR space and have some flexibility. It's not going to be the case. So I still don't see them having, one, the assets, and two, the financial flexibility to take on a big contract. Like, even if it's like Patrick Kane, who has a huge contract, and even if you retain money, that also means you're giving more assets to Chicago, most likely in a deal. So I still don't see them being in a spot where they're going to be a realistic player for a impact top six guy. And even then, as we said, you can make the case they go all in, but I still don't really know if you have the the right spots in terms of just how much flexibility you have in that regard. So I don't see them being a player for, they could get a guy that could be another middle six option. Like if there's a Zaka-ish player or another fourth line guy that can kind of solidify the bottom six, would not be surprised. But Patrick Kane or Bo Horvat or any of these other guys that are on pace for 80 plus points, I think Bo Horvat's on pace for 56 goals. Don't see it happening. There's a need for him, especially after this year, if a few guys leave down the middle, but I just don't see the Bruins being realistic players there. So we'll kind of see what the next steps are. Again, I think most of it's internal right now and how they address DeBrusk's injury, but if you're looking for outside help, I don't see that being the case over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, again, I don't know that you need to, and I tweeted out, after the injury happened, and it had not been announced that 4 weeks was the timetable. I said, maybe this changes things for the deadline. I don't think it really does. Maybe, again, this kind of just points out, hey, you need more depth for the playoffs, just like on D. Like the Bruins have good depth now, but more depth won't hurt. If you want to deal a second or third round pick for, as you said, a Zaka type player, fine, go for it. To harken back to the 2011 comparisons, like a Rich Peverly or a Chris Kelly, go for it. I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. But again, I don't think this changes a need for like a Patrick Kane, or as you said, like a Bo Horvat. I don't think you need to get the biggest fish in the pond. I think there's going to be teams that are gunning for those players, and you don't need them. I mean, again, you just lost your a top six stalwart. And your top six is kind of fine after he goes. You have the pieces there that can come in and kind of replace him. The other question, I briefly alluded to this, Fabian Lysell. Fabian Lysell, I think, obviously, off at World Juniors, a lot of people are saying, hey, when he comes back, should he get a look? I mean, the lineup looks set. Personally, I'm intrigued to see how he would do in the NHL. But I don't think that this situation necessarily calls for a call-up of him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the big picture and kind of the long-term outlook here. When you look at just how well this team is playing right now, if there's a situation where you don't have to burn a year of his ELC contract by bringing him up to the NHL, and he's a guy that, again, you look at his numbers in Providence, very encouraging, right? I think he's got 19 points in 20 games. Has not had a good World Juniors, right? I think he's 0 points in 7 games, which for a guy that is known as being offensively minded, has to get to the NHL level, has to clean him maybe his defensive game. He seems like a guy that could, light things up in World Junior. It's not been the case this year. It's been pretty disappointing for him. So I think if you're the Bruins, yes, he still is a high-end prospect, a blue-chip prospect for your team especially, but I would now, even with DeBrusk on the mend, burn that year of his contract and bring him up here for a test run when, again, this is a team that's already playing at a high level. I don't think you necessarily need to accelerate his timeline when you look at just the way this team's playing right now. Give Lysell the time he needs to, get caught up to speed down in Providence and really hone his overall game, because I don't think you need to rush him, even with this, vacancy, I guess you can call it. But again, when you got Zaka and Foligno and these other guys, I just don't really see it, right? I don't think you have to go above and beyond to bring a guy like Lysell up when he's going to get called up and get, hammered into the boards against like the Ducks or what have you, right? Like give him his time.
Yes, no, I agree. I mean, again, you just look at, are you going to take out Foligno? No. You're going to take out anybody in the fourth line? No, you're not putting Lysell on the fourth line. And, you're taking out Frederick? No. Or you're moving Zaka back down off the top six. So to me, again, from a hockey watcher perspective, of course, I'm curious to see how Fabian Lysell does with the Bruins. I think everybody is. But I just think the way this season has gone, how well things are going, Connor, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And there's no reason, as you said, to burn a year of the ELC and get him in there when, you don't have to. What I will say, though, is and I'll pose a question. I'm not in favor of this. I'll say this. But we're talking about trade deadline. And for a long time, trading Fabian Lysell has been a huge no. That's always, since they drafted him, it was always the case. He is the top prospect. He's, got high offensive upside, good future top six winger. Don't trade him. 8 goals, 19 points in 20 games down in Providence. Obviously 0 goals off at the World Juniors right now. Is there any world in which he gets dealt?
I mean, again, I think it has to do with the fact that there's so many other factors working against you, right? Like if you're trading a guy like Lysell, it's not for, I don't think, a Rich Beverly or a middle six
Better
guy,
not
right?
be.
You're
Better
acquiring
not be.
you're acquiring like a legit player back. Are you talking about like a Kane or a Horvat as part of that deal? Are you talking about old friend Matthias Ekholm, who apparently is now once again on the trade market? Like, are you
Oh,
acquiring another top four defenseman? Like, it has to be something like that. But again, you look at the cap flexibility, the fact that you probably have to move other contracts. So you once again have to throw in a couple of draft picks to get someone to take Mike Riley's contract or Craig Smith's contract. Are you dealing a useful NHL player like a Matt Grzelcyk or someone else like that to acquire another player like that? I feel like moving Lysell for right now just doesn't fit with just how the overall team is going. And you could counter that by saying, all right, don't make a move, but this team should be going all in. But I think you just look at all the other roadblocks in place with the fiscal limitations and what have you. I just don't see it being feasible. Love to be surprised if they do something like that where they, are able to swing a trade, but it's not something where it's all right, we need to make a move. Let's give away our top prospect we've had in a couple of years for a marginal upgrade or anything like that. So I just don't really see it happening unless like the right deal fell into place. But I think a lot of factors, especially financially, have to work in the Bruins' favor for that to happen.
I mean, again, the money doesn't work. Like, because if you're dealing, let's say, like you did Lysell and I don't know, prospects or something, or even like, some players off the roster for Bo Horvat, the money still really doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so difficult. Also, you know how in NHL, when you do franchise mode, there's a thing called morale. And when you make a deal, it'll go up or down. This Bruins team morale is like as high as it can be, right? High as it can be. You deal a player off the current roster, you're impacting that. Now, again, that's part of getting better, right? Like I remember back in the day when the Bruins let go Brad Boyes, right? Like Patrice Bergeron was deeply affected by it because Boyes was a friend and obviously Bergeron's recovered. But on a team like this where you're going for a cup, I don't know. It's a slippery slope.
Evan, as we saw, I think in early November when a certain ill-advised move was made,
I forgot about
don't mess with the vibes.
No.
With this
Well,
team, do not mess with the vibes, especially in that regard. That was a all-time
extreme.
Yes.
That was extreme. We can give them a pass if they went out and got like Matthias Ekholm, right? Like, okay, that makes sense. But that one you're referring to didn't make much sense.
Nope.
At all.
Was not.
That was quite dumb. Quite dumb. Anyways, Connor, this has been a Jake DeBrusk kind of centric episode. Before we go, West Coast road trip. Obviously, you have LA in there. You have all the West Coast teams that you normally play. I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I'm blanking. They play this is stupid. This sounds really stupid, but I don't want to mix them up because they always do separate trips, like with Arizona and everything. I know that they have Anaheim, they have San Jose coming up. Is this a trap? I know that's a stupid question, but is this a trap?
I mean, I think for the Bruins, it should be a good opportunity. I think where you've got teams that maybe aren't at the top of their standings, you shouldn't view it as a trap. I think when you look at the way the Bruins have even played for the last couple of weeks, yes, they've been, piling on points at a steady rate, but you also haven't seen, I think, a full 60-minute effort in quite some time. So I think it's a good opportunity to, continue to build your game, to hopefully get a few more guys rolling, especially with DeBrusk out. If you're able to go on this West Coast trip, build some more of that team chemistry on the road, which is always a thing that I think this team really values, any extended road trip like that. If you're able to go out there, more guys get involved in the scoring. You have a guy like Zacha or Foligno or these other guys that step into a little bit of heavier minutes. The Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak line gets a couple of goals. Can get the momentum going back in their favor, right? And trending towards that winning hockey that, yes, this team is talent-wise is loaded. They can come back from plenty of different deficits and turn the momentum around. But you like to see a good 4-1 win, a couple 4-1 wins or 3-0 wins or something like that over on the horizon where they kind of control play from the initial puck drop. So it could be, you could view it as being a trap in terms of maybe the level of the competition they're going up against, even though, I think give the Kings credit, that should be a tough matchup on Thursday night. But I think when you just look at the opportunity presented here where you're a little bit shorthanded, it should give the team a slate to hopefully kind of get back on, I wouldn't say winning hockey, but playing the right brand of hockey that they need to play, especially once you get further into the season and when you get to the spring.
And can we just talk quickly about how bad the Ducks are? Like, the Sharks are bad. We've discussed when the Bruins were in on Tomas Hertl, we discussed how bad the Sharks are last year. But remember that little beginning of the year last year, the little stretch where the Ducks were like first place in the Pacific? This was, going back to last season. I know they fell off, but like they have a legitimate chance of getting Connor Bedard at this upcoming draft. So, I mean, like,
might be pretty good. I mean, at that point,
then it's worth it. Then it is very worth it. But yeah, the Ducks, oh my God. I mean, just horrible. 11-24-4, 26 points down there with the Blackhawks and the Coyotes. So, never know. Might get Connor Bedard.
Good.
Bedard and Zegras and McTavish and Terry.
That's a team that desperately needs like a rebrand too. Like get Bedard in there and then like go back to the old sweaters. Get back what do they call it? Like eggplant teal or whatever they call it, like that.
Yes, I agree.
Bring those like funky colors back. Do like the 90s retro that is all the rage now across sports. And make that team just like fun because the players, the talent, it's there. Just got to put it all together.
Well, the logo, the D logo is really stupid. I've never liked that. I don't know. And the colors aren't bad. Like, I like the orange, but just the alternates they have, which are the Mighty Ducks logo. I think they should be full time with that. But anyways, Connor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered throughout this Bruins season with, takeaways, columns, features, all that stuff over at Boston.com. Beyond the Bruins coverage, we'll have all the hot topics that come from Boston sports, whether that's the end of this Patriots season, Celtics, Red Sox, who just signed Rafael Devers. So there's rarely
surprising.
Yes, there's we didn't even talk about David Pastrnak in that contract. So good for us, Evan, that we didn't.
We can keep
no, we're good. No, we're all set. We're all set. So yeah, there's rarely a boring day in Boston sports. I think we can both attest to that. And we have you covered every step of the way over at Boston.com. So please follow along over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan, Evan Marinofsky, Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.